From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks, Catherine Drew, thanks. I wonder if some of the skeletons coming back from North Korea are suspiciously small. I wonder. You can't trust that Kim Jong-un. He's a bit of a sly fox, I reckon. Welcome to the programme.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
A lot of these skeletons are suspiciously small, I think. What am I doing here, Ray? Let's try that again. I have to stop jerking around.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Yes, this is your Richie Allen Show, live on Fab Radio 2, TuneIn Radio, Trigger Warning .tv, and my website. How are you? It's the 1st of August 2018, Wednesday's programme, and I'm going to be joined this hour by an old friend of mine, a journalist and author, Christina England. Great lady. She's been writing in Health Impact News about the rollout of the HPV vaccine for boys, and that's the story that's massive, but it's kind of gone underneath the radar with everything going on with Brexit and Trump and collusion and Salisbury and poisoning. HPV vaccine for boys rollout, massive story. Christina England joins me this hour. I might throw the phones open in the second hour. I think I probably will. I've had a weird day. I was away for most of the day on show business, not on show business, but on business relating to the programme, website business and stuff. So I got back late in the day, but I'm prepared. Got a really interesting news roundup for you coming up in about 20 seconds time. And then Christina England, there's something you'd like to tell me, you can tell me by tweeting at Richie Allen Show. Do it now. I wouldn't put it past the dastardly North Koreans to stuff some of those coffins with some of their own bones. The stupid things that make me laugh, that are not really funny, but they make me laugh anyway. Right. Well. There's only one story to start off with, and of course, it's the big story of the day. Over to Kay.
Good evening. The far-right activist Tommy Robinson has walked free from jail after winning an appeal against a contempt of court finding. The Court of Appeal has ruled the case should now be reheard because of procedural flaws at his original hearing. Earlier, the former English Defence League leader was released on bail from Olney Prison in Warwickshire. Jason Farrell was there.
Why would I have anything to say to you? All you do is lie. You've lost the faith.
I'm just asking you a question.
You've lost the faith of the British public.
What? The media generally?
All the mainstream media do is like,
we've covered your campaign. We've covered your campaign. We're covering your release.
All you've done.
You can say what you like now.
All the mainstream media do is lie. The British public no longer believe you.
Okay. What would you like to say?
I've got a lot to say.
Yep.
Nothing to you.
He's saying nothing because he's under contract to Rebel Media and InfoWars. Aren't you, Tommy? You big fake tough guy. Got to keep those dollars coming in. Instagram, YouTube. In fact, it made me giggle today. Tommy looked more like somebody coming out of the Big Brother house than someone coming out of jail. Can't say anything until I've talked to Davina McCall, was Tommy's attitude today. He's free! Tommy, the Messiah. This is the new way. This is the way to be. I'm Tommy, and I am free. The champion of the working classes, the downtrodden, the underclasses, the martyr for free speech is free! Okay, he's been released on bail after winning an appeal against a contempt of court finding. 35-year-old is Tommy, and you might remember back in May, he admitted to charge and he was jailed for filming outside Leeds Crown Court during a trial. Now, at the Court of Appeal, Lord Chief Justice Lord Burnett ruled that the case should be reheard. It should be heard all over again because there were technical flaws by the judge who jailed Tommy. His solicitors said that everybody has the right to a fair hearing. He wasn't present, was Tommy. He was packing his 2 hold-all bags in advance. I presume he knew that it was going to go his way. And he was released from a prison near Rugby just before 3:30 today. And you heard what he said. I'd like to thank the British public for all of their support. Delusions of grandeur there, Tommy. Really, I don't think you necessarily have the support of the wider British public. 5 weeks in the slammer and Tommy is out. So Judge Burnett said, Lord Burnett said, we're satisfied that the process in Leeds was fundamentally flawed and we direct that it be reheard before a different judge. Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, will attend the Old Bailey for the hearing as soon as is reasonably possible. So they're going to get him back in front of a judge real soon. It's the movie of the week. I've said it 1,000 times. So here's 1,001. Told you before. This Muppet has never expressed an original sentiment in his life. Ever. He's one, or the latest one, in a long line of these clowns. Nick Griffin, David Duke, Ann Coulter, Pamela Geller, Anne-Marie Waters, Tommy Robinson. Nothing to say. Rabble-rousers. Blame Islam. Blame the Muslims. Empty-headed mushrooms. Every one of them. Now, I've not ever been one to brag, dear listener, but I annihilated Tommy Robinson in 2 interviews during my time at TRE in Spain. In fact, in one of them, he hung up on me. In fact, the second one, he hung up on me when I asked him, did he feel like a real man when he kicked his girlfriend in the face 10 or 12 years ago? What a champion, Tommy Robinson. And if you want to know who these people really are, Milo Yiannopoulos, Geller, Tommy Robinson, all the rest of them, read the articles by Neil Sanders on his website in his new blog. Terrific investigative journalism exposing the neocon Zionist backers of people like Robinson, Robert Mercer, Breitbart, Rebel Media, InfoWars. It's a massive psyop. Working class hero, eh? What they've done is they've made this gormless goon a very wealthy man, created a cult of celebrity around him, peddle easy answers, tell people what they want to hear. He will shill for the deep state neocon Zionists and they will pay him very handsomely for it. That's a fact. 11 minutes past the hour. He's out. Thank God for free speech. It doesn't, you know. And in a related story, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, has apologised. For what exactly? Well, for attending a Holocaust memorial event back in 2010. Yeah. At this event back in 2010, which he hosted allegedly, one of the speakers was Auschwitz survivor Hajo Meir. Very interesting man, who was an outspoken critic of Israel and said that Israel used the Holocaust to justify its tyranny against the Palestinians. So why is Corbyn in trouble? Well, the campaign against antisemitism, those guys, well, they reported Corbyn's attendance at the event in 2010 to the Equality and Human Rights Commission 8 years later. I mentioned on my website today, these clowns must be spending all of their time trawling through decades worth of memorial events, decades worth of Free Palestine conferences to see can they find incidents where Corbyn and others were in the presence of people deemed to be anti-Semitic. What a life, what a gripping life Gideon Falter and the Muppets at the campaign against anti-Semitism must lead. Proper goons. What they're doing is looking at these guest lists from way back And if you're in the same place as a self-hating Jew or an anti-Semite, well, you're guilty by association. Here's Laura Bundock, Sky News reporter today.
Now, this most recent incident goes back to 2010. Of course, Jeremy Corbyn wasn't Labour leader then. He was a backbench MP. But nonetheless, he held this event in Parliament, this meeting, the title of which perhaps might suggest some controversy. Never again for anyone, Auschwitz to Gaza. The event itself held on Holocaust Memorial Day. The key speaker, worth pointing out, was a Jewish Holocaust survivor, but very much likening the actions of Israel and Gaza to the regime, Hitler's regime, basically. And under the international definition, under Labour's definition as well, which clearly states that language that involves Hitler, the Nazis or the Holocaust should be resisted and regarded as prejudicial or grossly detrimental to the party.
And Corbyn capitulated. Here's his apology. I will read it out verbatim. The main speaker at this Holocaust Memorial Day meeting, part of a tour entitled Never Again for Anyone, was a Jewish Auschwitz survivor. Views were expressed at the meeting which I do not accept or condone. In the past, in pursuit of justice for the Palestinian people and peace in Israel-Palestine, I have on occasion appeared on platforms with people whose views I completely reject. I apologise for the concerns and anxiety that this has caused. What is he apologising for? Before we get into that, here's the lovely, sadly departed Auschwitz survivor, Dr. Hajo Meir. This is him not speaking, by the way, at the conference with Corbyn, but speaking on television a year later and explaining how he reached the opinion, how he came to conclude that the treatment of the Palestinians is basically mirroring the treatment of Jews by the Nazis during the period before and during the war. Here's Hajo Meir.
And what is happening now in Israel towards the Palestinians, they treat them like vermin. They talk about them in terms, I mean, like, for instance, the chief of staff of the Israeli army recently, the Palestinians are a cancerous growth. I mean, that type of talking is exactly the opposite, and it's actually like Nazi talking.
Nazi talking. Seeing the Palestinians as vermin and describing them as vermin, as IDF IDF officers have said in the past, as politicians in Israel have said in the past, it is Nazism. And you're hearing the voice of an Auschwitz survivor who kind of might know what Nazism is.
That's what was said about me when I was a boy, a Jewish boy in Germany, under the Nazis.
Yeah.
You know, when the Nazis gassed the Jews, the world was silent. Now, the world is silent while the Jews or the Israelis harass, humiliate, and steal away land from the Palestinians. And the world is silent. And I want to awake the world. Because any criticism on the policies of Israel is hampered and made impossible by a terrible trick and crime of Israeli propaganda, that any criticism on the politics of Israel comes out, is induced by anti-Semitic feelings. And our main purpose is to show to the world that we are Jews, and we are conscious Jews, and we want to show that you must criticize Israel if you at all want anything good for the Jews in the world, because what Israel is doing is destroying the Jewish world and the Jewish heritage.
Yeah, I wonder what part of that does Corbyn disagree with? What part of that doesn't he condone these days? Corbyn, eh? Surrounded by progressive fascists, far-left fascists, who love this shit. shutting down people through guilt by association. You can't be in the same building as that guy over there because of what he stands for. So what they've done is they've created a paradigm where to be in the presence of someone who has views deemed as offensive is to tolerate those views. That's a mind fuck beyond the scope of most people. You were at a party and there was a guy over there who denied the Holocaust. Your presence is indicative of your tolerance of his point of view. Therefore now you have to be attacked even. You're a legitimate target now. I've had it before. Oh, you spoke to David Duke, Richie. Oh, you had a guy on from the BNP, Richie. Oh, you spoke to UKIP, Richie. You're a disgrace. It's an outrage. No. Free speech means free speech for everybody, even people you most vehemently disagree with. Said it before and I said it again. While I reserve the right to lampoon and to ridicule vacuous nitwits like Tommy Robinson, I will defend to my dying breath their right to express their opinion. That's a fact. Corbyn has given his blessing to this idea that appearing with people whose views have deemed unedifying or unpalatable is condoning those views. Therefore, you can now be attacked. You might remember when I first invited George Galloway on this programme 2.5 years ago. He refused. And I said, why? I've got the printouts. I saved the printouts in case he deleted the chat. So I said, why? And he gave me a one-word answer, and that was Ike. Ike. Which I ridiculed. I said, you don't want to come on my programme because somebody I'm associated with said something that you disagree with. Wow. Of course, later on, I think Galloway realised, he didn't say it, but I think he realised that he was a bit of an idiot, and he came on the programme later on. So this is not going away, this anti-Semitism thing. It needs to be resolved, says John McDonnell, Corbyn's right-hand man, his shadow chancellor. This has shaken us to the core, said John McDonnell. Do you want to hear a bit of John McDonnell? If you think that Corbyn has capitulated, wait till you hear this.
None of us fail to appreciate I suppose the way this has upset people, including ourselves. It's really shaken us to the core, really, but we'll resolve it. We've got to. The key issue for me has always been we've got to resolve it within the Labour Party, certainly, but also the members of the Jewish community are really suffering out there. We've had a massive increase in attacks on the Jewish community, daubing of cemeteries. It's appalling that Jewish schools have to have security guards with them as well. So we've got to resolve the issue within our party and then get out there to assist the Jewish community campaigning against anti-Semitism within our society overall.
Where's he getting this nonsense from? McDonnell. This idea that the daubing of cemeteries and attacks on Jews are on the rise. They're not. All the evidence is to the contrary, and I'm not going to go over it again here. Biggest survey ever done in history last year of attitudes towards Jews came back and said, well, there's really no problem. Now, Gideon Falter, the retard who chairs the campaign against anti-Semitism, was on Sky today speaking on behalf of the UK's Jewish community. Now, this guy has got 900 Twitter followers on a 4-year-old account and says he speaks for the nation's Jews. Muppet. I won't subject you to him and his boring voice. But Richard Cooper, leader of Jewish Voice for Labour, he was also on the same programme at the same time as Falter. So Richard Cooper is Jewish and he's the leader of Jewish Voice for Labour. Listen to how the Sky presenter, aided by Gideon Falter, tries to shut Richard Cooper down when he tries to get into discussing the crimes of the apartheid state of Israel.
Most criticism of Israel is calling Israel to account for an apartheid-like regime, for racial discrimination, for oppression of the Palestinians, for denial of their rights to national self-determination, for stealing territory in the occupied lands, for refusing freedom of movement, for importing into the occupied territories. That is all legitimate. That is all legitimate comment.
Richard, we are not talking about Israel. We're talking about the Labour Party. Gentlemen, if I may.
He's saying that
Gentlemen, if I may.
See what happened there? They cut off his mic. This is Bill O'Reilly type bollocks now. They didn't like what he was saying, so they cut off his mic. Richard Cooper was in the middle of explaining what it is the State of Israel represents. He's a prominent British Jew, and it couldn't be allowed.
An apartheid-like regime for racial...
An apartheid-like regime, yes, that's right.
Discrimination, for oppression of the Palestinians, for...
Oh, plenty of oppression of the Palestinians there.
Denial of their rights to national self-determination.
Of an indigenous people who have legitimate claim to the land.
For stealing territory in the occupied lands.
Oh, they love to steal territory in the occupied lands, do the Israelis. They like to bulldoze people to death like Rachel Corrie. Fuckers. What else does he have to say?
For refusing freedom of movement.
Shut him up!
Importing colonists into the occupied territory.
Shut him down. Producer, as well as Gideon Folder, the vacuous clown screaming in the background, you've also got the producer telling the presenter, shut him up.
Legitimate. That is all legitimate.
Shut him up.
Richard, we are not talking about Israel. We're talking about the Labour Party. Gentlemen, if I may.
He's saying that...
Gentlemen, if I may, we are not talking about Israel. We are talking...
And he's an inexperienced presenter, this guy. He's not been around very long. I watch Sky and the BBC all the time. He doesn't know what's going on. He's there, he's all flustered. That's your media in 2018. He's telling the truth about the apartheid, vicious, racist, illegitimate regime of Tel Aviv, and he must be shut down. This is Wednesday's Richie Allen Show. Maybe transgender Freemasons a bit later on in the programme. I'm running over and I need to get Christina England on the show. So we'll take a break and we'll do that when I come back.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Welcome back to the programme. Then it's 27 minutes past the hour, Wednesday, August 1st, 2018. Now, it's been ages since my guest this hour was on the programme. No good reason for that. I have a lot of time for her. I think she's a really, really good journalist. She's a journalist and author. And she is across a story this week, which broke last week when I was away. It's a massive story, a huge story, and it's gone kind of missing amongst, as I said, the Salisbury poisoning, the Brexit collapse, Trump and collusion and all of that, and Putin. But it is a major story. And it is the story that the government announced that it would begin to roll out the HPV vaccine to boys. This is huge now. We've been talking about the HPV vaccine on this programme for several years after we were contacted by regret.ie, the ladies and the young girls, the families of children in Ireland, girls who have been adversely affected by exposure to the HPV vaccine, Gardasil, the human papillomavirus vaccine. I'm going to just get her straight on so she can give us the background to this. It's great to welcome back to the programme. Just before I welcome her, just to point out that she is running a huge event in London this November, a conference on the HPV vaccine, and I will tell you where you can find out more about that and where you can get tickets to it if you want to go and see it. Some terrific speakers go to speak on Sunday, November 11th. Before we talk about that, though, we're going to talk HPV rollout for boys with Christina England. Christina, welcome back to the show. It's been ages. Good to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Sad subject matter, but it's lovely to be back. Yes.
It's massive, isn't it? You what you've done in this article, which I'm going to tweet out now for healthimpactnews.com, is it's a brilliant article. It's a brilliant in-depth article that delves into where the pressure comes from, the external pressure on the government, on the authorities here to roll out something which has never been necessary for anybody, let's be honest, but certainly never necessary for boys. Pick up the story for us. What happened last week and why?
Well, originally there was a lot of talk about the boys having the HPV vaccine. Now, this was a vaccine, as you know, that was for the human papillomavirus, which is said to cause cervical cancer in women. That's debatable, but it is said to be, the cause, one of the causes of cervical cancer. So you think, well, why are they going to be offering it to boys? Well, they've been looking at offering it to boys aged 12 to 13, because the more I read and the more I learned about this vaccine, it's certainly a wonderful vaccine because it seems to protect you from so many different cancers. Now they're saying that they're going to give it to the boys because it protects individuals against oral cancer, throat cancer, penile cancer, and anal cancer as well. So when you start, it's very difficult for me to hold the phone because I've got a broken arm. So I've written this with a broken arm, and it's in plaster, but I'm going to try my best. As you go down through the article, the list of cancers grows because they've gone from the anus, penis, mouth and throat. A little bit further down, I've been doing a lot of research on this because I was asked to research it. And it's really now, it was started to come in. And then the Daily Mail announced that it actually helped to, there was a study out. And the study, it was from Italy, showing that the human papillomavirus can actually help men's chances, to lower men's chances of prostate cancer. Yeah. So they're now going to give the vaccine to people for prostate cancer. So that gives a bigger audience. They've got more people going to be interested because, as you know, a lot of men there are a lot of cases of prostate cancer. So the list of people that are signing up for this vaccine is growing and growing. And every time I read an article on the vaccine, whether it was from BBC News or Daily Mail or wherever, it just seemed to increase more and more on what this vaccine could do. And every single article seemed to include an organisation called HPV Action and a man called Peter Baker. And I kept thinking, well, who's Peter Baker? Where did he pop up from? Because I'd never heard of him. And I hadn't heard of HPV Action either. So I kept looking into it. And then when you actually work your way through it, it becomes really, really interesting. Because on the HPV website, they make all these kind of announcements, and they add in a few more cancers. It says to protect men and women from HPV-related cancers: anal, penile, head, neck, vaginal, and vulval. So it's like, well, hang on, there's a few more cancers coming there. Now, the Daily Mail are saying prostate cancer as well, so we're adding that one on as well. So already the list is growing. And then if you look into it, HPV Action actually says that they receive no commercial sponsorship for its advocacy work.
Now, hold your horses just for 1 second. This is really good stuff, this now. HPV Action is actually, as you point out in your article, which is brilliantly detailed, is an amalgamation of 48 different organisations whose stated aim is to reduce the health burden of the human papilloma virus. So it's a group of 48 organisations, and you said it's headed up by a guy called Peter Baker.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's run by Peter Baker.
And they claim to be independent, right?
It's supposed to be independent, and it's announcing itself as independent. But when you look at it in detail, they say on the website, on their own website, that the HPV-A, which is the HPV Action, funds are administered by the Oral Health Foundation. However, when you actually research the Oral Health Foundation, they receive unrestricted grants, for educational grants from Merck, the pharmaceutical company that makes the vaccine, a HPV vaccine, Gardasil. So already you're getting an organisation that's supposed to be independent, that's actually receiving financial support from Oral Health Foundation, who get their funds from Merck.
From Merck. Now,
so they're not independent, in other words.
This is fraud, Christina. If this is true,
it gets worse.
Isn't it fraud? Isn't it fraud to declare on your website that you're genuinely independent, but yet you're in bed with a group, this Oral Health group, and that group is in bed with Merck? You can't legitimately claim to be independent and to be doing your own research. But sorry for interrupting you, because these are such dynamic and serious revelations, I just want to keep rubber stamping that without getting in your way. I don't want to get in your way. So it gets worse than that, you say. Go ahead.
It does get worse because you look into it in detail. Now, I found a fantastic article, and it was called, it was actually published on the Pharma News website. It's PM Live, and that was titled MSD Supports Jabs for Boys campaign. Now, the Jabs for Boys campaign is run by nothing else but the HPV Action Group and Peter Baker, because he comes up again. Now, I read their article, and their article actually stated that HPV Action has launched a human papillomavirus awareness campaign backed by pharma firm Merck, Sharp and Dahan.
Wow.
So looking into it further, I actually sort of felt, okay. So I read that one. And then it seems to be that their information is absolutely correct, because as I've just said, the site actually speaks about being supported by an educational grant from the OHF, which is the Oral Health Foundation, and that is from Merck. So they actually state it on their site. It's right at the end of the page. It's in very small print, but it is there if you look for it hard enough, and I did. But if that's not worrying enough, HPV Action is actually working closely with the Joint Committee of Vaccination and Immunisation.
Now, remind our listeners how important the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation is. What is this committee? What does that committee do?
They are responsible for advising the UK health departments and the government on vaccination and immunisation. In other words, they say what vaccines are the ones to have and what vaccines are the ones to not have.
Very powerful.
So they are the ones responsible for bringing all the vaccines and saying yes or no to a vaccine when it's introduced into this country.
Jesus. And
so they are big. They work for the government.
They're basically telling the government what to do.
And hand with the pharmaceutical industries.
And you point out, now this committee tells the government what it should and shouldn't do with respects to immunisation. And lo and behold, committee members on the JCVI have not tenuous, but very strong links to the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes, and they actually admit they do. Nearly every one of them, every single member that I could see, nearly everyone had some kind of link to pharmaceutical companies. Some are not actually direct links, but they have an awful lot of indirect links. Some are directly linked to Merck, and some are receiving funding via the places of work. So they may not be receiving the actual finance themselves, but they will be working for a company or an organisation or hospital or university that is receiving funding from either Merck or GlaxoSmithKline or one of them. So this so-called independent committee is not independent. But I think we've known that for several years, because that's one of the things I was...
You've been working on that for years. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, it's not news, but it's never been investigated or reported by the British press. And the vast majority of people in the country whose daughters are going to high school for the first time this year, and their sons now, won't be aware that a committee that's advising the government on what inoculations their children should have, the committee has links to the pharmaceutical industry and Merck. And I want to take it back. This is unbelievable. I want to take it back a minute to this list of cancers that the HPV jab is allegedly going to immunise against. Staggering this, Christina, because no evidence is offered by Merck to support the claim that there's no case studies, there's no trials, proper trials that in any way demonstrates conclusively or factually that the vaccine will prevent against all of these cancers: head cancer, neck cancer, penile cancer, anal cancer, prostate cancer. It sounds like they're just claiming these things, but not even offering a modicum of proof to support it.
Well, I've never seen any studies on it, and I research every day. That's what I spend my time doing. And I can't find anything on it. I can find the odd study. Usually the statistics are flawed, and if you look, the variables are so high. I mean, I've done A-level psychology.
Yeah.
I know all the different studies and how they do the studies, and a lot of them, they're so flawed. And I mean, I know that you have Graham Downing on your show quite often.
Yeah, not for a while. I must get him back on, Graham. He's not been on for quite a while.
He's going to be one of the speakers at the conference, by the way. We're doing the big conference because so many people in this country are outraged by this vaccine. I mean, there's been so many girls injured. I've given really, really strong charts on this article, and you can see the list of adverse reactions. These are the ones that have been reported, and remember, we only ever get 10% of the ones that are reported. And so far, there's actually been nearly 24,000 injuries reported to the MHRA.
Is that right now? Because this is important, because a skeptic has been in touch with me, not tonight now, but in recent weeks. Somebody who doesn't believe that vaccines are harmful, somebody who trusts vaccines. And that person came to me and said, Richie, next time you're speaking to a journalist or to a doctor about vaccines, why don't you point out that we haven't seen in the UK the so-called problems that you talk about in Ireland? Now, you see, I've often wondered about that. I don't believe that to be the case, but some people are sceptical and they say, we've heard these reports of girls coming down with debilitating illnesses in Ireland and elsewhere, of course, as you've written about, Christina, but they say, why haven't we seen such an epidemic in the UK? But we have had problems here. Go ahead.
We have, because I've seen the results, I've seen the different reports. I've spoken to mothers myself. I was only speaking to a mother the other day. She wasn't a UK one, but her daughter had been given the vaccine and she was only 4 months old. It was given to her by accident. The girl became very, very disabled and very ill after the vaccine, as you would, because she'd had a load of other vaccines that day as well. The mother was blamed for her injuries and the child was taken into care and taken away from her. And she lost the child because she complained that the vaccine was responsible for the child's injuries. And it was a vaccine that she shouldn't have gotten. It was a HPV vaccine. But, you know, in England, the reports are going up and up. We're doing the conference. Several of the speakers are from England. The conference we're actually running in November, we have speakers from all over the world. I've worked so hard to get these speakers to come. We've got speakers from Ireland, Spain, we've got them coming from America and England, and there's people coming from all over the world just to listen to the conference. We had somebody actually come and book today from Auckland, and we've got somebody from an actual lawyer that's coming to the conference from Denmark, and somebody else coming from the States. So this is a big, big conference, and we've worked so hard to set this up. This is happening in November. It's not an anti-vaccine conference. It's an educational conference. What people take from it is up to them. We're only offering the information.
You're putting the information out there, and you're letting people. I've tweeted a link to it. November the 11th, Sunday, November the 11th. The link is on Twitter, but you can go to tickettailor.com and you'll find it there under events. It's a freelance journalist. tickettailor.com/events/freelance journalist. Conference on the 11th of November in London at a venue to be confirmed, and it's a spotlight on HPV vaccines, attended by people, speakers, the likes of which have been on this programme before. Very, very, very interesting and very credible people like Graham Downing and Brandy Vaughan, of course, the former Merck employee, and Christina herself, and many other speakers as well. It is quite staggering. You know, there was a time, I think, in journalism when this would have been Pulitzer Prize winning material, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, you know, to demonstrate that there are people advising the government on what to do, and those people have been through the revolving door, worked for, used to work for, still do work for in some capacity, Merck and some of these companies, and they're pushing stuff on children in this country and making absolutely ludicrous claims like, you know, penile cancer, anal cancer, prostate cancer, neck cancer, head cancer. This is a one vaccine cures or prevents all cancers. It's obviously nonsense, Christina.
Like I say, it's a vaccine that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
It does. If you go onto my link, I've actually given a link to the Joint Committee of Vaccination and Immunisation, their paper, so you can actually see the paper for yourself. So that I haven't pulled these statistics and these things out of the, just out of the sky. I have actually really researched this. It took me about 4 days to write it. Probably because I had a broken arm at the time, and I still have.
How did you break your arm, boy? I was going to ask you this.
Tripped over the dog.
Oh, mother of Jesus.
Yeah.
Pets are hazardous.
I've got a puppy.
It does happen. A friend of mine hurt himself falling over his cat recently. There's nothing funny about it. It does happen. Healthimpactnews.com, the article, I've put a link out to it as well. This is important stuff.
The article, because it is big. I have done an awful lot of research. I have also got the chart from the MHRA, which is one that was received on freedom of information. We've also got another chart. Now, the other chart that I've further done the article is very interesting because it's got a list of all the vaccines at the bottom, and it's got coloured sort of lines going up. It's a graph. And if you look at it, it's actually from the Time for Action group. The Time for Action group is an action group run by parents of children that have been damaged by the HPV vaccine. The majority of these, as far as I know, are from the UK. I do know quite a few of them myself because I've met them at conferences I've been to. But this chart is one that they actually gave me because they actually made a statement, and it's quite a strong statement on the article. And I've also got an article from, a statement from a doctor who is a gynecologist and obstetrician, and he gave a very, very good analysis of what he thinks should happen with the HPV vaccine, and it's a very, very strong statement. I've also got a statement from a mother whose daughter, who was actually one of the main reason that I was doing the conference for her, because this mother, Amanda Dew, wonderful, wonderful mother, very, very clever. She's actually gone and done a science degree since having her daughter injured. Her daughter has been very, very damaged by this vaccine, and it is such terrible injuries. She's got she's now become very severely epileptic. These girls seem to be the ones that have been targeted somehow by the vaccine for injuries, seem to be the ones that are the most athletic, the most energetic, wonderful girls. They're usually in sort of dancing, skating, or they're sort of doing athletics, gymnastics, all those kind of things.
Let me just stop you there for a minute. You said you said targeted. Now my ears pricked up when you said targeted.
I feel that they are being targeted. That's my own word. I mean, it's my opinion, but the girls that seem to be injured, the ones that seem to get the most injuries, are the ones that are the most sort of athletic, healthy, vibrant girls with so much life and so much to give.
Now listen, call me a fool if you want. I don't mind. I've been called worse. Could it be, Christina, that you're talking about young women with obviously very, very fast metabolisms? I mean, I was very athletic, if I can say it. When I was in secondary school, I was very fit. I was involved in all sorts of sports. Could it be that the fitter you are, the fast metabolism, maybe there's the link there, but maybe targeting. Listen, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I don't know.
Maybe targeting might be the way.
Might not be the best word. Yeah.
To use. But these are the girls that seem to be injured, and the ones that I've certainly come into contact with. One was a fantastic horse rider. She was injured. She got paralysed by the vaccine. These girls are getting paralysed. They're getting chronic fatigue syndrome. They're getting a heart thing called POTS. They're getting all kinds of really, really severe symptoms.
Now, the young woman, Christina, the young equestrian woman who ended up paralysed. What I'm always fascinated to hear is what did her physician, her GP, or the specialist she went to see in hospital, what was their explanation for the collapse of the girl's health effectively? Because this always interests me.
Yes, this one. I actually went to see this one. Her name was Ashley Cave. She wouldn't mind me mentioning her on radio, I'm sure. She's a lot stronger now. She's come through a lot of it, but she was one of the girls that got the Cervarix vaccine. That was the first HPV in this country. In fact, she was one of the first girls that I actually know who got it and was injured. I met her, we're going back a bit now, but she was one of the first girls I ever wrote about. Now, that young lady, she was 12, but she had an autoimmune problem. She did have heart problems as well. If you read the data in the Cervarix pack, it says not to be given to anybody with an autoimmune disease, which she did have, or anyone with heart problems, which she did have. Now, this young lady became paralysed after the vaccine. I went to the hospital and saw her there. She could definitely not use her legs. She was in that hospital for 2 years.
2 years.
And they couldn't really find anything wrong with her. There was one thing, she was getting infections all the time. They didn't really find out completely what was wrong with her. And then her mother made so many complaints. She had so many journalists from mainstream papers coming in, interviewing her. Now, I actually went in as a friend. I didn't go in as a journalist. I went in as a friend because I was a friend of the family. But what happened was I got thrown out and told I looked like a journalist.
You looked like a journalist.
Obviously, journalists must have a particular look, and I look like one. But anyway, I got thrown out. But shortly after when I was there, her mother got accused of Munchausen's by proxy, making it up to get attention. This little girl, turned around to me and she said, "Do you think I want to wet myself on purpose to prove a point?" Because she was incontinent, both incontinent bowels and bladder. This poor girl. And
so they blamed, and this is not the only case where this has happened.
No. This is happening all over.
Yeah, the first time we ever spoke, you and I, we talked about your experience with Munchausen by proxy, and we talked about that. So in many cases, they've blamed a parent, the mum, or they've said that the symptoms are psychosomatic, there's something else going on there, and they've washed their hands of responsibility.
Yes, that's right.
That's what happens. And we've seen this, of course, in the Republic of Ireland, where the mothers of many of these young girls have been accused on national television and national radio of child abuse, effectively.
Yes,
for asking questions, yeah.
It is horrendous. Children are being taken away from their parents. They tried to lock little Ashley, she was only 12, but they tried to lock her up in the psychiatric unit because they said, if it wasn't the mother, it was her. And she made a very good case for herself. They stole her laptop in the hospital. They stole her mobile phone, stopped her having any contact with the outside world because they said that she was, doing damage on Facebook. And it was all lies, and she was trying to tell all these lies, and they weren't true. And it was true. It was absolutely true. I saw for myself it was true. And yet, this is what they do. Little Brody, they couldn't find anything wrong with her. That's the lady that the conference is for, and her child. Brody is a very, very damaged girl. She's got chronic fatigue, she's got epilepsy. She has the most horrific fits that can last a long time. And she's been very, very bad. We're not just talking one fit occasionally. We're talking one or two every couple of days. When she first started, she's a lot better now. But when she first started, she has about one a fortnight now. But even then, it's quite regular. Other girls have become infertile. There's girls that have died. There's been 8 deaths in the UK, from this vaccine, and these are all actually listed on my charts and things that I've shown. And these are not charts that I've made up. They're charts that have been received from the MHRA, Freedom of Information, and they've been passed to me by Time for Action, the action support group. That are supporting parents.
You quote, by the way,
so many injured that they're having to support parents now. There's groups coming up all over the place.
And it has popped up on the Daily Mail every now and then. It has popped up once or twice on the Telegraph in terms of, an article that isn't slanted. We've had it over the years once or twice, and then there's no follow up. You quote Dr. Christian Fiala, I hope I pronounced that right, or Fiala.
Fiala.
Yeah, Fiala, yeah, who's calling for some... I have no qualifications whatsoever, but as a but we're reasonably intelligent people, and because we're reasonably intelligent people, you and I believe that there is more than enough evidence to have a moratorium on this particular vaccine, just to stop it, pending a proper... inquiry in the Republic of Ireland, in this country, in Northern Ireland, to look into it. But he's a lone voice, Christian Fiala, in terms of calling for a moratorium. I was going to bring up, very interesting recently to see some of the UK newspapers have a pop at Andy Wakefield, because...
Always having a go at him.
Yeah, because he's befriended a famous former model, and it's another opportunity to have a pop at him and to basically slant and misinform people about what really happened when he went public with his findings. So doctors, I'm guessing a lot of doctors in this country, Christina, GPs, a lot of them must suspect something is rotten in the state of the UK with this vaccine, but to speak up about it is to be struck off or to be alienated, and to eventually lose your job effectively.
Yeah. Well, Christian Fiala, he really did stick his neck out on my article. He did. I wrote some articles about the Sacrificial Virgins films, the documentary series they did, and sadly, they didn't go up on the internet. It's a shame because they were very good articles. However, the original comment was for one of those articles. But I used it for this because I didn't want this particular comment to go on a waste, and be wasted. So the question I asked him was, what action would you like governments to take regarding the HPV vaccine? And that's what you've just said. That's what he came out with. He said an immediate moratorium until the efficacy of HPV vaccine for cervical cancer has been established and the possible cause of the vaccine for the reported side effects, some of them serious and even lethal, has been determined. Now, what he said was, and I thought it was very clever actually, because he said there was no real causation had been discovered, and he said there are many examples about correlations which are not based on causation. A Google search will give you some idea. The one obvious example is the presence of storks and the number of children born in Eastern
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, Austria. We have many storks, and I plotted the number of storks and deliveries together. As you can see, there are times when there is good correlation. However, one would not call for an increase the stork population as a means to increase the birth rate. He went on to say the HPV vaccine and cervical cancer is exactly the same. We will get rid of the HPV, but this will have no impact on cervical cancer rates. And also, what he's told me also is the fact that cervical cancer is actually on the rise and it's not going down at all. He actually said on the film that the vaccine was absolutely, totally useless.
Why is it on the rise, Christina? Is it on the rise because there is a tendency to promiscuity?
Sorry?
Is it on the rise because youngsters are more sexually active? They're sexually active earlier.
Possibly, but I think it's on the rise because a lot of people that have had the vaccine have actually gone on to get cervical cancer. This can be proven. It can be proven. I've seen the statistics. Certainly, Frida Birrell, she has given the statistics. A lot of doctors are speaking out about this. I've seen lots of different articles, including this information. So it's out there on the internet. Have a look yourself. Find it out.
We've seen. You're right. We've seen it with the flu vaccine this winter just gone.
Yeah.
When I say this winter just gone, it's 5-6 months back to the winter. But I've never met so many people who ended up with the full-blown flu and were wretchedly ill for a few days, who said that a few days earlier they had taken up the vaccine at their local NHS surgery. I have no doubt that you're onto something there. Just before we do run out of time, it's just after the top of the hour, a minute past the top of the hour for Wednesday's programme. Christina England is our guest. Healthimpactnews.com. I've tweeted out a link to that article. It's deadly serious, this, and anybody who's got a teenager who might be offered or probably will be offered this vaccine, they need to know this stuff, and then once they know it, they can do whatever they want. But once they've been given the information, I just want to mention again that Christina has organised a conference which will take place in West London on Sunday, November the 11th from 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. I've tweeted a link out to where you can get tickets, but if you go to tickettailor.com and look for freelance journalists, you'll find the tickets, but I've tweeted a link already there. Terrific speakers.
And I just got in there.
Jump right in. Go ahead.
Right, we haven't actually given the venue for obvious reasons. It will be announced a couple of days before the conference. It is in West London, but we've not given the actual location of it because of the fact that it could be shut down. We're quite open to people coming with views of it that are different from ours, and that's absolutely fine, but it is an educational conference. We don't want it shut down. We don't want it to be banned and not go ahead, because we've got speakers coming from all over the world. So
and you have a fundamental right. And you have a fundamental right to assemble and to talk about these issues with qualified men and women, which you do have. Absolutely final question, and thanks for coming back on today, because this is vital stuff. Final question. There's a bit of positivity, because in the article you say that you're seeing public outrage. Do you think, compared to this time last year, now I think last time we spoke about 6 or 8 months ago, do you think from 2017 to 2018 you're seeing a shift in awareness amongst people who maybe ordinarily wouldn't look at health impact news, maybe ordinarily wouldn't listen to the likes of this show? But you feel, though, that there is an awareness shift, that people are starting to ask a few questions?
Yes, absolutely. I'm being inundated with, people wanting to befriend me on Facebook, and you do get the odd troll, but the 90% of them want to know the facts. They want to know what I know. I am only a journalist. I'm not a doctor. I don't give advice. If somebody asks me, whether they should have a vaccine or not, I never, ever say whatever I think or give them advice. I just say, it's your child. It's your fundamental right to do the research and to decide for yourself. I can't choose for you. It's not my child. What I do with my children is up to me. But, I'm not going to give advice. I don't. I believe in education. Looking at the facts for and against and making your own mind up. It's up to you.
Yeah, it's brilliant, Christina. We'll talk before that conference. I'll make a note of it to get you on closer to the time when you have a definite venue.
Yeah, there is another reason why we're having the conference. There is a book going to come out. I can't say any more than that. But it's a very, very important book, so people should be looking out for it. It'll be out when it's published. I hope to come on the show and
of course you can. Absolutely. I look forward to reading it. Christina, thanks again. Excellent article, and thanks for coming back on the show. Lovely to have you back again. Really good stuff. Rare breed, really. People like Christina England are rare breeds. Genuine journalist. Research is terrific. Puts it all out there. Sources and provides sources for every statement, for every fact claimed in her writing. And I've said that a number of times about her. There aren't too many people like that. Quite staggering, really, when you look at the claims being made about this vaccine, that it will protect boys and girls from oral, throat, penile, anal cancers, as well as neck cancer, head cancer, whatever that is. What's head cancer? I've heard of brain cancer and brain tumours, but what's head cancer? And all manner of cancers. And they're just claiming this stuff. It's like I've been saying since about Christmas 2014. This is a post-fact world. It's a landscape devoid of the media, of any media. You just claim whatever you want. Amazing, really, isn't it? Yeah, give it to your boys and your girls, and it'll prevent or protect them against all of these cancers. And if you believe that... Yeah. Right, I'm going to take a very quick break. This is Wednesday's programme, August 1st, 2018. I'm Richie Allen. Loads of tweets on this. I'll get to some of those in a minute when we come back.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. The Richie Allen Show relies on your support. Go to richieallen.co.uk and set up a monthly donation today.
Public service broadcasting, that's what it is. Vital information put out there by Christina England. Incredible to think the Joint Committee on Vaccinations, how do you say it again, the JCVI, is that right? Let me scroll on down there. The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, advising the government and the health departments of this country on what they should do. And a glance through the committee members sees or shows or highlights or demonstrates many of these people with direct links to Merck and other pharmaceutical companies. Amazing, isn't it? The sort of stuff that everybody should know, but sadly, you and I, and probably 0.001% of the nation, actually know. 9 minutes past the hour. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I had a second hour guest booked in. But I needed to do quite a bit of research on what we were going to talk about. We were going to talk about GMOs. Really interested man. Great man, I think. And because of the Tommy Robinson stuff and because of the Labour anti-Semitism stuff and because of the interview with Christina, I've asked him, and because I was arriving very late in the day to the studio, I've asked him to wait till Monday to come on. This guy's going to blow your mind when he comes on the programme on Monday. So because I was away all day working on the programme, on the website, on shopping, there won't be any super male vitality pills for sale on the Richie Allen Show. I won't be endorsing anything, but I'm going to run as a means to bringing some revenue to the programme. I'm going to have a little shop, and I can promise you the products in the shop will be very nice products. They will be high quality and they will be very, very affordable. And it's being worked on as I speak. So I was away all day doing that. Had a guest, but I had no time to research him. I'm not going to screw around and speak to somebody about something I don't know a lot about. So I've put him off. So what we can do, if you want, is you can reach me on Skype. It would be nice to speak to somebody who disagrees with me, whether it's on Tommy Robinson and my opinions of him and others like him, or somebody who's a staunch supporter of Jeremy Corbyn and who cringes when I criticise Corbyn and the things Corbyn says. You know that this is an open place. I don't mock, I don't ridicule, I don't chastise. If you've got something to say to me that is contradictory, if you disagree with some of the things I've been saying, please get in touch and have your say. So I can open the phone and the Skype for the last 35-40 minutes of the programme. I got waylaid by a call last time I opened the phones. It was important what the gentleman was saying, but if I do take some phone calls now, I am going to move it along. The way to chat with me via Skype is chat with Richie. If you've got Skype open, My Skype line is Chat with Richie, all one word, no T in Richie. So that's Chat with RICHIE. That's my Skype line. You can Skype straight into the programme. There is a phone number as well, which I should know off the top of my head. It's a Manchester number, 0161 818 2018. That's 0161 818 2018. If you're calling from outside the country, you drop the 0, therefore making it +44 161 818 2018. I'm not all that bothered if it isn't that busy, because I didn't plan this and I gave you no notice. I gave you no heads up about it at all. And like I said, there are things to talk about and there is music to play. Took one bit of music last night, one song last night, none tonight, so we can maybe fill a bit of time with a little bit of music as well. You can do whatever you want when you're the chief cook and bottle washer. This is the Black Crows on the Richie Allen Show. Great to be with you. Was Chris Robinson his name, was it, from the Black Crows? Hard to handle. Used to get ridiculed for apparently trying to be like Mick Jagger. There you go. Now, loads of tweets. Let me get through a few of them. The Skype line to the programme is open. Chat with Richie is the Skype name. I know it's all very last minute and I gave you no warning about it. I don't mind. It's there. And 0161 818 2018. Loads of tweets on my conversation with Christina England. Hi to Rich Mortimer, by the way. No news on the talk planned for November. Rich, you'll hear it the minute there are. The minute there is. Bob Stew likes the Black Crowes bass ninja. Not too fond of the Otis Redding cover version. Would prefer if I had played Patty Drew's version. I'll dig it out for you and play it in the future. Nick Molyneux tweets, I just did 10 minutes of quick research, Richie, and the penile, anal, mouth and throat cancers that the HPV is linked to are all rare, but all occur mostly in people aged 60 years and over. So why the necessity to immunise 12 to 13-year-old boys? It's a great question, Nick, and thanks for doing that little bit of research. You know, I'm no genius, but I think if you'd have said to me, Richie, what age group do you think you're more or most likely to develop these cancers, I probably would have said post-50s. So I'm not surprised to hear that. Good stuff, mate, by the way. Martin in Spain and Tiger Johnson and one or two other people are chatting about the properties of and the success of using colloidal silver. Now, Aaron Calland, an old friend of mine, was involved very importantly in this programme in the first couple of years, 3 years of the programme. Aaron swears by colloidal silver. He used to tell me all the time it was good for so many different ailments, and he was a guy you could believe, Aaron. If he said he took something and it was useful for him and it worked for him, you could believe him. I've never taken it. I don't know anything about it other than the anecdotal, as I said, kind of stories that I was given by people from time to time as well. Hi to Charlotte in Burnley and to Dee, who says, thanks for speaking with Christina. I will be sending that to my sister who has children coming up to the dreaded vax time. That's D there. See, my big concern, one of the things I'd be very interested in is so what if we get to the stage where parents have begun to look away from mainstream sources? So they begin to look at independent sources. They begin to listen to doctors, general practitioners, medical doctors, qualified people like Rima Lebo, who comes on this programme, like Graham Downing mentioned by Christina. What happens if people start looking towards those other sources and then decide, well, I tell you what, I'm not going to take a chance because I heard a GP, then I heard a biologist, and then I heard from a statistician, and they've all said that it could very well lead to problems if my daughter gets the HPV vaccine. It might lead to problems. Therefore, I'm going to decline. If that begins to happen, how soon before that is legislated for, and how soon before, like what we've seen in Australia, we get UK families being told, we will suspend your benefit payments, we will suspend social welfare, we will deduct vital income that you need to support your family if you don't get this vaccination. How long before that comes in? I would suggest if a lot of parents and people start to turn away from these vaccinations, it won't be too long before these lobbyists impress upon legislators, politicians, governments the need to make these things mandatory. Now, don't come screaming at me. I know that in certain parts of the world, certain vaccines are mandatory. I know that in some countries you can't work with children unless you can prove that you've had this vaccine or that vaccine, or you can't work with older people. I know all this. I'm aware of it. But I'm talking about this country here. How far away from that are we? You know? Yeah. The Robinson brothers. David Stanford. Hi, David. Hi to Lord Twat Waffle, my favourite Twitter name. Lord Twat Waffle. They don't come much better than that. 21 minutes past the hour. If you want to contact the programme, chat with Richie on Skype, or you can phone 01618182018. I'm not expecting a deluge of calls because I left it late. It's been one of those days, a crazy day today. Driving around, loads to do. Had a 25-mile drive outside the city in crazy traffic. Traffic was even worse coming back. I missed another appointment. I was trying to do some work on this talk that I hope goes ahead in November, which might or might not be interesting. Didn't get back here till very late. So it's been one of those days. Now, I must tell you before we say hello to Faisal, who's been on the programme before, but not recently. Before we speak to Faisal, I was put in touch with an actor called Isaac Cappy. And I was put in touch with him by at least half a dozen listeners who said, Richie, get in touch with Isaac Cappy, who's had roles, minor roles, but still good roles, in blockbusting films of recent times, films like Thor and other blockbusters like that. And he's been speaking out recently, as Isaac Cappy, about paedophilia in Hollywood. So I got in touch with him and invited him on the programme, and he was happy to be contacted and said that he would come on with me tomorrow to discuss his experience of working in Hollywood and what he has come to understand about Hollywood and a predilection for child abuse that seems to be a big problem in Tinseltown, Hollywood, whatever you want to call it. So he's coming on the programme tomorrow, and I'm going to speak with him before he comes on, and he will come on the programme tomorrow. Right? Okay. Faisal.
Hello, how's it going?
It's not going too bad at all. Welcome back. It's been a while. Are you going to take the devil's advocate position? Are you going to support Tommy Robinson?
No, you won't catch me supporting Tommy Robinson.
Good man.
Ever since I really saw the evidence that he is a Zionist.
He is. I mean, we would endorse his right to say whatever the hell he wants, but we would retain the right to ridicule and lampoon the man. I think we probably agree there. But yeah, we won't get on to Tommy Robinson then. The obvious Zionist. What's on your mind, mate? You can set the agenda now.
Yeah, I basically wanted to take the opportunity to quickly talk about something which I've managed to kind of miss out in all my other phone-ins, which is a general thing about the media and one of the brainwashing things it does, which is when something goes wrong, like you have the charities at the moment with still shielding sexual abuse, as I saw in the Metro yesterday.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got the BBC thing with Jimmy Savile thing. cheerleading for the Iraq War, stuff like that, and even the council and other authorities when it comes to Grenfell. And one of the things I've noticed, and is a real bugbear of mine, is that the media will always rush to look at organisations and to kind of shift the focus onto the organisation. Should we keep this organisation? Does this mean we have to get rid of this organisation? And we'll really keep the spotlight away from people. And with anything, let's say with the Jimmy Savile thing, you've got actual people who hired Jimmy Savile. You've got people who, and it was even in the police report. I think the police did a really excellent job with the reports they wrote on Jimmy Savile posthumously. And it was criticised because really they wanted to take that opportunity to really get down what they thought of Jimmy Savile and what was credible evidence, what were credible testimonies, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that was really avoided was looking at that and looking at, well, hang on, who knew, who had really heard that there were allegations against Jimmy Savile and then done nothing or even helped him in his career and covered up for him. And then especially at the end, the makers of the Jimmy Savile tribute, how many of them really did know what he was like? Admittedly, there'd be some in there who had absolutely no idea, who were doing it in good faith. But then definitely the people who suppressed an expose on him to promote a tribute to him.
Senior people at the BBC and
senior people
and senior people at Buckingham Palace must.
Yeah, there's that too, and in government. I mean,
in government must have
take
known.
a quick opportunity to praise, an unlikely praise to Edwina Curry for really coming clean on it, on how he got in charge of Broadmoor, because I think it was because she thought there'd be much more fuss about this and many more heads would roll. And she wanted to put her statement on record, as it were, in an interview before things hit the fan, hoping that there'd be some leniency towards it. But of course, she underestimated how much it would and could be covered up.
And I do believe Edwina Curry. I interviewed her I interviewed her in London 4 years ago, about 5 years ago, in fact, about her knowledge of Savile and introducing Savile to Broadmoor, and I gave her a bit of a chasing, as we say in the trade. Now, I knew her from my days in Spain interviewing her, so she was happy enough to come on, and I believe her, I absolutely believe her. But you have the intelligence agencies in this country, you have the people who run Buckingham Palace, who run it for the royal family, you have the political hierarchy, as you said, and you have BBC senior people must have known Faisal. It is untenable to suggest that they did not know what this guy was doing.
Yeah, and so just to kind of put that out there and give a reminder to people that is a major issue. This blaming of blanket sort of blaming of organisations, and then shifting the question to, is the BBC a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's got nothing to do with that. Organisations don't kill people; people do.
So do you think, my friend, that what the charities will now do, the likes of Oxfam and some of these, they're going to throw a few patsies to the wolves, right?
I'm not even sure they're going to throw any patsies to the wolves. There's I read the article in the Metro yesterday, and it was naming a couple of names of people who seem to have managed to slink away out of it, but there's no hint of even a suggestion of somebody might want to prosecute somebody. It does then, in the end, start shifting it towards the organisations. Should something be done about the organisations? Is Oxfam a good thing or a bad thing? Is UNICEF a good thing or a bad thing? And I'm pretty sure there's at least half the personnel in those people are good, honest people who are trying to get something done.
Undoubtedly.
And what is wrong with looking at the people who definitely we're complacent with sometimes criminal activity should be prosecuted, and otherwise very unethical activity who should just be named, shamed, and should definitely be fired.
Here's a question for you. I know you won't have the answer, because none of us have the answer. It's all speculation. When it became known to the top brass at the BBC and elsewhere what Savile was, and I'm sure this was known to them in the 1970s, if not the 1960s, you can only conclude that their failure to act can only be put down to one of two reasons. Reason one, they were terrified of what might happen to them, because maybe it was known that this was maybe endemic in the establishment, the abuse of children. Yeah. Or, worse again, that some of these people were themselves participants in the, preying on minors. It's got to be one of two reasons.
When it comes to the higher ups, I would definitely say it was the latter. There's very little evidence to suggest that if let's say somebody had blown the whistle on Jimmy Savile and they had some authority to do so, in other words, it would be hard to shut them up, that the fuss itself would be so big, there would be so many people that would have been dragged down with it, that it would be hard to imagine how there could even be a reprisal when the public would be so on the side of whoever blew the whistle.
Yeah.
And that I think covers most of the top brass. When you get to individual reporters and stuff like that, then admittedly they might have a bit of an excuse of the former, that they're worried about what might happen to them. But then again, is that really an excuse in this sort of area?
I don't accept it as an excuse, but I try not to condemn. Look, life is hard, right? Everybody is struggling. And that goes for me, my partner, everybody we know is struggling. We are all a couple of months joblessness away from not being able to make the rent. That is no joke, that. I mean, it's serious. It keeps me awake at night sometimes thinking about it. That's where we all are. And journalists and reporters have never been paid less than they are being paid now. They come out of these universities like Salford Uni, which I went to, and many universities around the country. And there are thousands of them graduating every year, Faisal, and they're trying to squeeze through a bottleneck. Thousands are applying for maybe only a couple of hundred jobs. So they're taking less money. And real journalism, of course, is suffering as a consequence of this, because Christ, if I go down this avenue, I mean, we know that detectives, senior men and women with 25, 30 years behind them, were told when they got down certain streets, when their investigations took them down certain roads, were told, listen, you stop here or you're gone. Pension is gone, you're gone, family is gone, forget about it. I don't like it, I don't make the excuse, but I can understand. It's easy to take the easy path.
I can understand it to some extent, but and especially nowadays, I'd say the last 20 years, but let's say even in the 90s, I was in the position that I was really struggling to figure out what to do with my life and how to somehow earn money, to have any independence at all, and so on and so forth. And after a lot of examination, kind of settled on street music, which was about the only thing which just about fit my ethics, which I could still do to earn money. But I have to say, even in the 90s, if you had any kind of qualification that qualified you for journalism, yes, you might have a hard time getting by as a journalist. But then again, was anybody really worried about being on the streets in those days if you had those qualifications? I know a lot of people who even just had who could get a job teaching English abroad or something like that, and who managed to have a great time simply with one of those English Cambridge certificates, English language ones,
or the TEFL cert, which I got myself. Yeah.
And so, or proofreading. I knew people who would manage to get jobs proofreading, and it was quite a cushy number, and stuff like that. So I'm not to be honest, pre-2000, which is when we're talking about with the Jimmy Savile thing, really, I don't have that much sympathy for journalists as such who would be worried about their career.
You've also
put their career over ethics.
You've also got to factor in. Look, I take that point. By the way, Derek is standing by. I'm going to bring Derek in a second after we say goodbye to Faisal. But just before we do that, Faisal, look, how do we know that journalists didn't go to editors in the 90s and say, listen, I've got the scoop of the year here. I've got the scoop of the decade. I know that legendary DJ Jimmy Savile has been buggering children, boys, girls. He's been raping patients in hospitals. How do we know that journalists didn't go to their editors and were then told, forget about it? I'm sure it happened.
It's one thing to be told, forget about it by your editor. Of course, that did happen and was going to happen, and I'm sure that was the case.
But what could you do in the 90s? You see, this is the thing.
Use your imagine a bit, chat it around, and maybe leak that information to people who were in a position to publish it. There were all kinds of alternative news outlets then, papers, alternative magazines, and okay, maybe not many people would have thought about this, but if you have a controversial story in one country, let's say Jimmy Savile in this country would have was always going to be shut down by any newspaper editor or channel editor. However, you could go abroad with that story, you know, where the actual policy, the editorial policy maybe didn't cover scandals in England, you know, that maybe politically were not so bothered about or even happy about something that damaged the UK government and establishment, and then pass that story abroad. Often a way of getting it out is getting it into a newspaper abroad, so that it then has some backing to then make it back home again and get that story out at home.
Do you know, it's brilliant, and I'd love to know. It's one of those things, it could eat away at you. I'd love to know for a fact, you know, who tried to get it out there, who went to newspaper editors, who went to news desk editors in commercial TV, radio, national TV, who went to the Sunday World newspaper, you know, very famous tabloid in Ireland for many years, who tried to get it out there, because I think, you know, probably people did, but of course, you know,
it's starting to get a bit late to chase that one up. That's
I won't be chasing it, but I'd love to know.
High-ups at the BBC who gave the go-ahead to the tribute and squashed the expose.
And they're still amongst us.
That is definitely a good start.
It is, of course, and they walk among us, these people. And the question begs to be asked, Faisal, just before I move on and get Derek on, and thanks for bringing this up, by the way. It's really important, this. It's really important, this. The question begs to be asked, why haven't some of these people been interviewed, even in the presence of a solicitor, to be asked? I mean, I've often said, and what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If Jeremy Corbyn is not guilty by association because he has met with people deemed to be racist in the past, even though they're not racist, the same goes for, however detestable he might be, the heir to the throne in this country is entitled to the same privileges as the rest of us in terms of innocent until proven guilty. I've never accused the heir to the throne of anything, but I would say, why, as his avowed best friend, why the police in this country didn't speak to him, friendly chat, Your Highness, or whatever you want to bloody call him. You knew this man for many years. You wined and dined this guy. Did you hear anything? Is there anything you could tell us or help us with? There are massive questions, mate. I really appreciate that. I'm going to give Derek a shout, Faisal. Thanks for kicking us off, mate.
Great, thanks for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure. I'm sure we'll be speaking again. That was Faisal there, and I can't get rid of the feckin' sounds on the Skype. Skype changed 2 weeks ago, the whole thing. It's a new version, and I can't figure out how to mute all these incidental feckin' noises, and it's driving me mad. Honest to God, I can't figure it out, and I'm not that much of a technophobe that I can't do it. I'm pressing buttons there, trying to get rid of these stupid notification noises, and I can't do it. Derek got in touch, and I'm glad that he did, and said he wants on. Derek, welcome.
How are you, Richie? How's things?
Things are great. A Dublin accent. Get in
yeah.
there. Are you in Dublin, Derek?
No, I'm actually down in Wexford. I'm not far from your old stomping ground.
Good stuff. You've had some summer there, haven't you? On the East Coast, Dublin, Wexford, Wicklow, Waterford. It's been amazing there.
Yeah, it's been beautiful down here, Richie.
Thank God. Like ourselves.
Thank God. Best one since about 76, I reckon.
I vaguely remember late 70s traffic jams going on for ages over a fuel shortage. And I think that was during a heat wave year. And then there was 1995. And then from then on in, it was rain. It was rain until this summer. Brilliant to have you on, man. I'm not going to waste your time talking about the weather. Over to you, Derek. Go ahead, man. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I'd just like to talk to you about essentially what's going on in this country, especially since little Leo Varadkar took over with the immigration. It's unbelievable, Richie. You probably don't know because you haven't been around, but
no, mate. It's increased
in the last 4 or 5 years. This place, especially in Wexford, because I've been here a good few years, it's out of control. And I'll tell you what, I'll give you a good story. I was up with the county council. I've been waiting years on some sort of an accommodation because I'm on a disability payment and I can't really work anymore. So I've been on the housing list, you know yourself.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of the councillors there a few weeks ago, and I was asking them why are they housing people who aren't Irish at all? And it's not a racist thing, or
no, it's not. It's not. It's a legitimate question. I'm going to just put that right out there. Go ahead, mate.
Yeah. And even they are beginning to wonder what the hell is going on. And they're saying it's it's from central government. There's nothing we can do. But I'm telling you, Richie, I've been living here for years, and I've seen people who are just coming in on boats or wherever they're coming in from, mainly non-European citizens, and they're just getting housed as if it's there's no problem at all. And it's ridiculous. Now I know in Britain, you've probably had it for longer, but you know yourself, and we're always a couple of years behind the rest of us in Europe.
well, I remember speaking on when I was at WLR-FM in Waterford years ago. Back in the late 1990s, we had an influx of people coming from North Africa, and many of them they ended up in Tramore, and you'll know Tramore well. Derek, you'll know it well. For the listeners that don't, Seaside Resort in Waterford, very well known. It gets a lot of dubs and people coming down from the north in the summer. Nice place at the best of times. Maybe a little bit tatty, some people. Listen, I'm a working class boy. I loved it. Anyway, long story short, so they were coming into Tramore and places like that. People were phoning the radio show, Derek, and they were saying that they were distressed to see that social housing, which for our listeners who don't understand, is affordable housing owned by the local authority or by the country, made available to people who, for very good reasons, like Derek has outlined, need to have a house that they can afford to rent. And people were saying, we're finding that asylum seekers and economic migrants from North Africa are getting some of these houses, and it's unfair because we've been on the list for years. Now, Derek, when these people came on our radio show at WLR-FM, the Socialist Workers Party and the Sinn Féin Brigade and others were quick to come on and say that these were racist Irish people. And I remember thinking,
got it myself.
It's not racist, it's a legitimate question. And where are they from, these people? Are they coming from?
I tried to approach, actually, Southeast Radio about it, and they wouldn't even talk to me about it. They just don't want to know. Nobody wants to know. And I know a lot of people around Wexford now have been around here a good few years. And I'm telling you, Richie, it's the least people you would expect they're all beginning to wake up to this kind of influx of people from all over the world. I mean, I'd have no problem with European Union citizens. Now, I'm not pro-EU, but, we're in the European Union. You can kind of go, well, fair enough, free trade and,
Well, we sold our soul, didn't we? We sold our soul to the devil.
This ain't European Union. This is something else altogether. And it's ever since Fine Gael came over and took on control. It's like it's gone on to steroids.
You think it's increased since then? Where are folks coming from? Are they coming from Syria? Are they coming from Libya?
Yeah. Middle East, North Africa, mainly from the African nations.
This is a horrible problem, you see. It's a horrible problem because both you and I know what has been done to these people. We know this.
Oh, it's disgusting. If we weren't dropping bombs on their head, they probably wouldn't even be here.
They wouldn't be here. But at the same time, try and tell to somebody you're on disability, you need that affordable home to rent. Tell anybody that's in your situation or other people who might be worse off than you who've been on the housing list, say to them, well, it's not their fault. And I know you're not saying it's their fault. I know you're not. You've laid the blame squarely at the government, and you're absolutely right to do that. And you can't get on the local radio to raise it as a topic because,
they won't even listen to you. I've tried to ring up a few times under, a couple of pseudonyms or trying to get in there. They won't. The minute you approach the subject, it's like you're either branded a racist or they just cut you off. It's one or the other, it's absolutely ridiculous. But it seems to be, it's like it's kicked off in the last 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. It's like it's on steroids now.
Here's the question, Derek. So inevitably you would imagine tensions are going to rise between the new influx of migrants, many of whom are fleeing lunatic situations that we couldn't even imagine in Syria and places like that. Again, and you're not blaming them, of course. So they arrive. It's having an obvious economic impact on Wexford and elsewhere, which has to lead to some sort of rise in tensions between the indigenous population and the migrant population coming in. Have you noticed that? Is there a rise in tension?
There is, Richie. I mean, even just talking to people, like even just down the pub there on Saturday night down for an hour, and I was talking to a few old guys now at the bar. You know yourself, these old guys who sit at the bar, they've been there for the last 50 years, even they're beginning to say it's getting ridiculous. I mean, there's no work. Services are just gone to pot. You can't get a GP appointment. You can't get a hospital appointment for anything. And it's just, they're overwhelmed. They're just overwhelmed. Even the housing officer I was talking to her a few weeks ago, and she was saying, even she agrees with me. She says we're overwhelmed. And the problem is the state aren't building any houses. It's all the private sector.
Yeah.
You know yourself, like it's the propping up the private sector, because they just have no more money, And I think something's going to give. I really do. I can feel it. Even my own son, who's only 18, even he and his friends are beginning to notice, and they're getting angry because they're leaving college, they're leaving school, and there's zero work, and it just gets covered up. You'll never hear this on RTE or TV3. You know yourself, Richie.
Oh yeah, like I said, when we did anything on it, not only were the people expressing opinions like you've been expressing, were they deemed as xenophobic and hateful, but from the top, I mean, my presenter was the programme controller at the time, rest in peace, God have mercy on him, Billy McCarthy. But from the top, from the board, we were kind of gently encouraged not to be, covering much of that. We don't want to be seen as, a kind of a Daily Mail or kind of a right-wing radio station. And I used to argue, being the producer, I used to say, well, look, we open the phone lines every day, like Jerry Ryan did for many years on 2FM.
God bless him.
God bless him is right. And we would let people come on.
I'd say if Jerry Ryan was low today, he would, he'd be doing if he had his own show, like independent show like yourself, he'd be top of the tree.
He talked to anybody, wouldn't he? I mean, he certainly wouldn't be trying to censor opinions like the opinion that you're expressing there. I don't know what to say about it, because you mentioned housing. Obviously, the only housing being built is in the private sector. It's unaffordable for most people, and then
the vast majority of people. Yeah, I mean the rents in Wexford. Do you know? I was talking to a fella I used to rent with, and he got in contact with me. He's renting a house in London for the same price he was renting a house in Wexford. Now get that.
You're joking me.
In London.
Holy
same
Jesus.
Price. More or less, give or take 20 or 30 quid. But like, that's how ridiculous it's got, like, Do
you know what? I took a gig. It's well known I took a gig with the People's Voice in London in 2013. I came from Spain to do it. And there wasn't a lot of money at the People's Voice. There was a pretty large amount of money raised at the beginning, £400,000 or whatever, but it didn't last very long. So I agreed to take £3,000 a month to basically work 80 hours a week. It was a joke. But I agreed to do it because money wasn't my motivation. So I went to do it anyway. And we were in North Wembley, which is one of the cheapest places to rent in London. And I nearly died when I found out that the best we could do, a 2-bedroom department, fairly nice, fairly modern, fairly clean, but small, we were paying £1,250 a month for that.
Yeah, it's bananas. You know, I mean, I know people down, like, you think it's bad here. I want to go up to Dublin. 14, 15, 1,600 euros for a 1-bedroom apartment. And it's no bigger than a flea box, you know. I actually know 3 lads who have got good jobs, you know, kind of suit and tie, pretty good jobs in Dublin. They're living in their cars because they can't afford to rent, you know.
And houses are being repossessed by criminal banks.
Oh,
and
10, 11, 12 a week, apparently.
And where are they going? And they're going to vulture funds.
Yeah.
Vulture funds are buying up these houses.
You know Sandyford, Richie?
Yeah, I know Sandyford well.
The way they've done it, they've done a huge amount of building over the last 15, 20 years. The vast majority of apartments are owned by big institutions. You know, like the big banks, the big insurance companies. And they're all just outpriced for the average person. You just can't, you know. That's why I moved to Wexford in the first place. I just couldn't get away from Dublin. Get out of Dublin. I couldn't live in it. And I was earning good money. I worked for 30 odd years in the printing industry, earning good money. And I still couldn't afford to live in Dublin. And it's just getting worse and worse.
And it's kind of a gentrification, really. It's what it is. We've seen it in London. We've seen it in New York. And can I just ask you, just before we run out of time, if it's personal, tell me to feck off, but are you all right? Do you get by, Derek?
Just about, yeah. Just about. I have a room and I just about get by with a few bob every week. Luckily, I have no loans or cars or credit cards or anything like that, so I get by. But I know many people who are just going down to the food bank. You go down to Tesco late at night and you know the way the stuff goes out of date?
Yeah.
The cheap food, I know there'd be queues of people looking for it, you know.
And they've changed their policy, haven't they? I'm glad to hear that, Derek. Honest to God, I'm glad to hear that you do get by. Haven't they changed their policy? Didn't Tesco at one time or another put bleach on food in the food bins? Right. But not anymore. They're giving it to people now. Is that right?
They're giving it to people, and anything that's not sold, I agree with it, goes to, you know, the homeless charities and stuff like that. But it's coming right from the top, Richie. It's coming from especially the Fine Gael government. Jesus Christ. Talk about right wing. Oh, you know, little Leo. He's not even Irish, really, you know.
No, it's laughable.
And I think it's probably directed from Europe, really. Probably where it's coming from, you know. But I envy you Brits over there. Fair play to you for at least trying to get out. Whether you get out or not now is a different story. But there is a bit of Irish exit brewing. You can see it happening. Maybe it might take another 10 years, but you will see a UKIP type party springing up in Ireland, and it's going to be very, very popular. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it all over Europe, Italy, of course, and elsewhere. Hungary, of course, being a notable example of that, where it's on the rise. Populism is on the rise. People, my big fear, Derek, I'll give you the final word, but my big fear is that we get these red herrings like the Greek party Syriza, which I get most predictions wrong. I really do. I'm not joking when I say that. But I knew when Syriza came in Greece a few years ago, I said that it was a Trojan horse, that the people believed that they were going to be delivered from the madness of the EU by this party, but really nothing would change. And I think it's the same in Italy. They give you the opposition to themselves. Yeah. It's a wonderful thing, you know. But anyway,
I could probably see it happening here. There is a very young Irish party. I can't remember. I think it's like the National Party or something, but it's complete controlled opposition. You can see it. Even the people who are in it are all establishment. Yeah. You know that way?
Yeah, reform from within, yeah.
Even my father, who's in his 70s now, and he's a staunch, very, you know, pro-EU, very mainstream kind, even he's beginning to realise what's going on. Like, what is going on, you know? So, I just thought I'd let you know, like...
I'm glad you did.
You aren't the only ones over in Britain. It's happening in Ireland. It's brewing.
And people
watch this space.
And people in Wexford and Dublin and Wicklow and Waterford, they're finding that.
The country, Rich.
In the last few years, migration has increased kind of exponentially, and Irish folks on the housing list who need affordable housing, state-owned affordable housing, can't get it because it's going to people that are coming in. God love those people, whatever their circumstances might be, it's causing problems with housing in Ireland.
Internal problems, you can see, you know. And it's young and old, it's right across the spectrum. It's especially the younger people, they're beginning, because they're not looking at the RTE and the mainstream, they're getting their information from the likes of yourself and other places. They're beginning to realise that this whole European Union thing's a joke, you know. And it was great in the boom, Richie, because there was loads of work. But the boom was well over.
It was fake. It was fake. It was fake, though, wasn't it? Because it was based on
completely fake.
That's right. It was based on money given, but of course that money was never meant to be paid back. And of course they take it back in terms of taking all the public assets, taking them private, and doing what we talked about with the vulture funds and putting people out of houses. Derek, I'll tell you what, mate, it was absolutely brilliant to hear from you. Thanks for that. You and Faisal saved the second hour of the programme. No, seriously.
You've been listening to you for years. It's nice to eventually talk
well, thanks
to you,
very
man.
much for listening, number one. And two, look after yourself and say hello to your dad and get him listening to us as well. And come back anytime you want. If there's any change in, you know, with respect to what's happening there with housing and that, let us know and we'll get you back on again. Cheers, Derek.
Aye, cheers, Richie. Loving the show, man.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for that. Really good to hear from Derek there in Wexford. Great stuff. And Faisal a little bit earlier on. That's about it then for the programme. Christina England's a great journalist. That was hugely important stuff in the first hour. If you know of anybody who's got children going into secondary education, even though I think they're giving these vaccines earlier and earlier and earlier now, but who might be on the schedule to get this HPV thing, put them in, put the information in their hands. Let them know about people like Christina England, people like Andy Wakefield and others who've been on this programme, Rima Labo. Show them the articles. Don't beat them up and tell them that you know everything, because you don't know everything. I don't know everything either. But tell them, listen, there's another opinion on this stuff. I don't know. I haven't a clue. I'm not a doctor. But there are other opinions on this. There are thousands of girls in Ireland. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. There are unlimited cases over here of injuries. In Denmark. In the Far East. I don't know. But look, have a look at it and have a think about it before you commit to giving this vaccine to your daughter or to your son. Thanks for listening. Isaac Cappy, the actor, joins me on Thursday's programme tomorrow, 7 p.m. as usual. Big shout out to Christina England and to, of course, to my callers tonight, to Faisal and to Derek there in Wexford, who saved the second hour. Going to leave you with Alice Cooper, a song called Poison. Speaking of vaccines, I've been Richie Allen. Thanks for listening to the programme. Look after yourselves and one another. See you tomorrow. It's bye from me. Bye now.